All right. Thank you, Jeffrey. Well, yes, we are talking politics now. The weekend saw the Ibadan declaration. Looks like just before elections we have declarations. The last time we had the Abeokuta declaration, in some sense, by the president. But this is quite different because it's a coming together of opposition parties to make a declaration on how they will be approaching the 2027 election. And we're joined on the program by the National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Ini Ememwong, right here in our Abuja studio. Good morning, Mr. Ememwong.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Good to have you. And welcome.
You look good, man.
Thank you. I'll take that. You just came back from Ibadan, Southwest, but it's now been described as a wild, wild west. Is that what it is?
No, that's not what it is. In fact, I think everyone should commend Governor Seyi Makinde for reminding us of the circumstances and the consequences. You know, there's usually the argument of cause-effect relationship, the causal factors of what led to the wild, wild west, and the resultant effect of that. And therefore, what is the essence of history if it doesn't teach? What's the essence of history if people don't use it to guide themselves and guard themselves? Because those who neglect history are doomed by it. And therefore, what he did was a reminder, a conscious reminder, that we are gathering here in this city. And incidentally, in this city in 1965, actions that look like what the federal government is. And remember, in his speech, he said, those who are acting as if there is no tomorrow should remember. And so when you begin to analyze the action of the APC-led federal government, you know, today, and the actions of the central government of that time, both in intent and outcome, you find similarity. In fact, you find more gravity today. In fact, if the government at the central government then had done half of what the APC is doing, it would have been wild, wild Nigeria. It wouldn't have been wild, wild West alone. It would have been wild, wild Nigeria. So for me, it's not the reenactment of wait here, no. It is the reminder that things like this, a cautionary sign. That's why you have guardrails on bridges. That's why you have caution signs. They say speed bumps ahead.
But it sounded like a threat. Like, see, we also have something that we can bring to bear if, well, we see that this thing is not favoring us. And the invoking of, remember that Operation Wetia started from here. By the way, there's the angle of politicians painting a target on their backs, because Wetia was essentially targeting politicians on the one hand. But the point of invoking that and saying, remember that happened from here, is this election a do or die?
No, election is it's not about the election, it's about Nigeria. It's about the survival of Nigeria. And if you remember that it was from Wetia, you know, it was a precursor to the death of the First Republic. And we are getting to, there's a book that's written by John Campbell, Nigeria Dancing on a Brink, where a lot of these issues, and that was way back, you know, during the Obasanjo transition, the first transition, 2007, civilian to civilian transition. So was that a threat? The gentleman who isn't even a Nigerian was simply saying, Nigerians have been so used to dancing on the brink that they forget that they are so close to the boundaries, and that if they tip, that the way down is so far. Was that a threat? No. The use of history must be used to guide. It must be used to teach. That is why it is useful. And so what history does, and so whoever uses history to remind the totality of us, we must thank that person. It wasn't a threat. It's just like, in fact, the way you're asking the question, it is only a subjective mind and the mind of an aggressor. You know, and again, the people who are making the comments, especially the APC, lack any moral fiber to make for a party whose governor threatened an entire opposition and threatened that they cannot guarantee the safety of a Peter Obi in Edo State, and that party could not at least caution that governor. And Peter Obi now went to Edo State and something happened and nothing happened. So what are you saying? I mean, so for a party that promised a parallel government in 2013, 2014, for a party that promised to make Nigeria ungovernable and the baboon and blood narrative, I mean, so it is using, this is not a threat. It is simply recollecting history to say, dear friends, we are gathered here. And remember that it was the action of politicians, you know, that led to this. As we are gathered here, we are issuing, if you check all of those 8 resolutions, apart from the 9th, which is commending Governor Makinde, the delegates at that summit took all of those resolutions in a bid to prevent the occurrence of a reoccurrence of what happened in 1965. So it wasn't a threat. It wasn't intended to be a threat. It didn't come through as a threat except to those who know what they are doing. So who is threatening democracy more today? People who are creating an asphyxiation of the opposition, people who are making an incursion into opposition strongholds, the same thing that happened there. People who are sponsoring and creating state-engineered factions in political parties, just exactly like what happened in the other time. People who, remember, even now there was also a carryover in the Second Republic where you found elections that were not credible being done in states that the National Party was making an incursion into the heartbeats of the action group, and that led to the collapse into UPN, and that led to the collapse of the Second Republic. Who is threatening democracy?
You know, we can go on and on about this. And they say for politicians, it's numbers. If you had a chance to, you would also get members of the APC to be part of the coalition, or be part of the opposition, wouldn't you? Isn't that something that politicians naturally do?
It is not the what, it is the how and why.
But isn't that something you would?
No, remember there are critical elements to an issue. Why are we doing this? What are we doing? How are we doing? When are we doing? Those are critical questions. So for example, you invited me. This interview won't last forever, so that's the issue of time. When? Why are you asking me? You're asking me because you need clarification. You're not bringing me here for an attack. You're asking because as a participant, you believe that I heard firsthand, in case there were contextual issues that were not covered by the press. That's why you're bringing me. So the why matters, the how matters. And when I came in, we sat down, you didn't back at me. So how you do it matters. So the fact that an interview has happened is the what. How you are doing it is the how. And so what the question is not whether people are moving from one party to the other. No, that's not the question. The question is how are people moving? Is a president who has the capacity to declare state of emergency in a state, is he actively, like the Plateau State governor said, that he was personally invited? And that invitation, when you look at it contextually, would mean summoned to the APC. So can you see that it took the president going to Adamawa for a governor to leave? And you hear these stories. When you recall the fact that a serving minister will get on TV and say, I will put fire in your state, and fire enters the state, political fire enters the state, political crisis enters the state, and the state security, state apparatus, and government do absolutely nothing. So you think that governors who are afraid will just sit down? Nobody wants a state of emergency declared in his state, because when it happened in Rivers, nothing happened. In fact, they had a judicial stamp thereafter.
Right.
And so you must understand this context and say that we are not quarreling with who is living and who is not. We are quarreling with the how and the why that these things are happening. There are crude tactics that are being deployed in ways and manner that threaten the game. You see, there is no harm. That is why in a football match, you see that the referee is there to regulate. Incidentally, in this case, even the referee is wearing the jersey.
And I said that's one of the resolutions on that declaration. But let's go to our Lagos studio. There's still a lot to unwrap and unpack from this. Jeffrey Bukola.
Yeah, Mr. Memobong, of course, as a politician, you guys will always defend your side. But we must not double down or descend into anarchy. I think that's the central theme here. When we started the program, I kind of reeled through from 1965 to 2015 to some of the things you cited on how politicians, permit my words, have taken turns to be reckless. And at the end of the day, it is the people that will bear the brunt if things go south. He made a good point. Perhaps the sour point was what he made in terms of Operation Words here, but you've come to defend it. Well, it's your party, but we must sound our notes of caution that it is the people that will bear the brunt if anything goes wrong, whether it's orchestrated by the PDP or the APC, whichever party, or the ADC. But since my colleague has taken you on that particular question, the next is, my question borders on, is the opposition in this time, the coalition, are they aware of the timing that is necessary for them to be able to put their acts together? We just have, today is what, 26th or 27th? I think the party just has maybe till May the 10th or so to be able to put its acts together, whatever that act is. So when the party came to say, we will have one presidential candidate from the opposition. What does it really mean?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, and good morning to you. Truth is that when like I said, the rule of history is either a reminder of a good past or a bad past. And like Barack Obama said, that in every generation there is a defining moment. In this Fourth Republic, this seems to be the defining moment for the Fourth Republic. And at the defining moment, people either confirm or confront their history. So they confirm the positive side of their history and they confront the negative part of their history. And it was necessary at this time because never in a democratic dispensation within the democratic cycles within this Fourth Republic has democracy, multi-party democracy, been challenged the way it is. And therefore there was need to draw back on a negative history to place it as a constant reminder that we may never go there. Remember that in scripture, when the Israelites went through a lot of journey, they erected a stone of remembrance. That when they got to that point, they would remember that thus far the Lord led us. And therefore, what Makinde did, and in the way we understand and perceive it, apart from those who have any other thing to fear, is a remembrance of a negative history that we may never get there again. And therefore, so should we quarrel about the effects and not worry about the cause? So, coming to the issue of the pressure of time, the opposition leaders are clearly conscious, aware of the pressures of time, and which is why one of the demands is an elongation of time. But whether that happens or not, we have a framework of the actualization of the demands of the Ibadan Declaration. The activation of that, the process of the activation of that, of course, is the working of the back room. But what I can assure you is that we are determined within the ambit of the law to ensure that a one-party system is not foisted on this country and that there will be credible alternatives. So no matter what timeline is given, truth is, we are getting set, we are ready, and the end will justify the means.
So I was asking about when the resolution was that there will be one candidate. So now we have, this is the first time we're having your group, the Turaki group, of the PDP. We have the ADC. We have other people, coming together. So I wanted to be clear. Maybe Nigerians would like to know: is it that how will this work in terms of modalities to get one person to be the opposition figure presidential candidate? Just walk us through what that means.
Okay, so let me walk you through, which is why the resolution is that we have agreed to work to the production of a single presidential candidate. Because all of us have agreed that going solo, it would be very difficult to defeat the common adversary, in this sense, the APC. And so what we have agreed is and that has started immediately after Ibadan. Meetings are beginning to get underway to see how to smoothen the issues, because within this amalgamation are issues, some differences within the subsets, because this is now an accumulation. It's like that maths, the mathematics of sets. So you have subsets with defined boundaries within a larger set. So what is being discussed now, and as we speak, is how to blur the lines of boundaries within the subsets, so that within the context of presidential elections, we can have a whole without the presence of subsets. And I mean, that is political engineering, which is ongoing. So I can assure you that as things progress, we'll put you to speed, up to speed about the path that should go out, because we've also discovered that immediately you take a step, you find counter steps being taken, and so there has to be a lot of strategic maneuvers, so you speak less, you allow things to happen before you announce it. So, but I can assure you that the agreement coming out of Ibadan is that, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, we have come to a point where we are facing existential crisis, not just for opposition political parties, but for democracy itself. So in the interest of saving democracy and for the benefit of having a multi-party democratic system for the benefit of the people, what we have agreed is to create a framework that we can work towards the production of a single presidential candidate, so that all the parties can come together and we can now confront the APC. How that happens, which platform that, I mean, we've thought of to the point where if they take both the ADC and PDP and other, which is why other parties came together, which is that neutral platform that they don't expect that we are going to go to and make sure that we give them a battle. Anyway, in fact, even if they take these elections to the dream, we'll follow them there and we'll make sure that we win them in this their election. And so those are the technicalities of how to arrive at that is better done at the background. But I can assure you that the pressure of time is in the consciousness of the leadership.
And so I'm wondering if this means that, from a few days from now, we'll be seeing a merger of PDP and ADC. I know that you're shying away from confirming that. But you also said moments ago that whether or not that happens, that there will be an activation of the back room, which was one of the key outcomes of the Ibadan Convention. What does that mean?
So what that means is that there is plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. And the whole essence of what we met in Ibadan is to say, gentlemen, previously we have had disagreements, but we are faced with the extinction of alternatives. And monopoly has not been good for any society, whether in terms of market, whether in terms of services, whether in terms of, even in terms of friendship, so it's not good. So we must provide alternatives. And having agreed to do that, we are now streamlining the framework and creating a framework that can deliver that option for us. So there will be option A, there will be option B. And I must state that we must even thank the APC because it took their constriction of the political space to get Ibadan to happen. If all the parties had no problems, if Ibadan wouldn't happen. If Labour Party had no crisis, PDP had no crisis, ADC had no crisis, all other parties had no crisis, and people did not see through that the process was being engineered to create a one-party state. I'm sure that Ibadan would not have happened. So the APC must understand that Ibadan is a direct response to the activities. So I can tell you that the period of merger is over, like Jeff said. We don't have that timeline for merger, but whatever understand, this is political engineering. And incidentally, the day we met in Ibadan was the same day the biggest civil engineering feat occurred in history, where a seaway was made to link the Great Lakes and the Atlantic. So we also, not just historic, we weren't referring to history alone negatively, we're also referring to history, positively. So I can tell you that the biggest political engineering experience of this Fourth Republic is about to be birthed.
So are we going to also be seeing a presentation of candidates at the other levels under one umbrella, i.e. Senate, House of Reps, governorship from either the PDP or the ADC? Would it be under one umbrella? And how does the party or parties involved now intend to pull that off?
Well, I think you really want to be a part of that inner meeting because these are the things that will be discussed. These are things that are being considered. Because yes, it could be a pyramid structure. It could be a pool structure where you say, okay, if we're doing a pool structure, we pull everyone together and we run that pool structure. It could be a pyramid structure where we agree at the top, but begin to slightly disagree at the base so that the triangle can sit properly. But what we do not want is a rectangular structure where you have too many heads because it will simply give a slight advantage to the other side.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, we want a viable opposition. So I can see the tactical maneuver you're talking about, because some people have said as soon as you move somewhere, there's going to be another faction. But let's hear the politics. For me, I'm waiting for May 30th, where we're going to be clear. Now, let's talk about the timeline and one thing that is important. And you may not give us the full picture, but you may give us what you think as an idea. One of the reasons that the APC was able to form government in 2015 was because they answered a very simple yet critical question. And that question is not who is most qualified, who can win the votes. they were able to look amongst themselves. They had, all kinds of, great people that were qualified to be president. But they summarized and said, it's not about being qualified or not being qualified. At the end of the day, who is the person that can win the vote? We have been seeing, now the PDP has joined this, is it coalition now or opposition coalition? Well, but with the ADC, we're seeing, I won't call it fragmentation, like hardliners, pairings happening. Are you guys asking that critical question about who can win the vote, not who is most qualified? Because if you miss it, the chances are slim.
Yeah, ultimately, the move will be narrowed to answer that question. Because, and that question, which is why if you listen to the speech by Tanimu Turaki SAN, he said we must begin to take data-driven decisions. Decisions not emotionally, decisions not regionally, decisions not based on religion, but decisions anchored on data. And so that is how the discussions in the room were shaped. And out of Ibadan, those analyses are beginning to come through to say, how do these candidates stand individually? How do they stand within the framework of the opposition? Because if people win elections, so for example, in 2015, there were people who could not have, the Buhari tsunami swept a lot of people into the National Assembly. So if you use the fact that someone had won elections in 2015 through that tsunami to judge, then you'll be wrong. So contextual analysis, nuanced analysis is ongoing at the moment. And across the board, the PDP is not joining the coalition. What we have now is an opposition, a broader opposition understanding, where other parties, the ADC, the PDP, and all other parties, look at what the chairman of the Democratic Leadership Alliance did. He came through and said, look, we're a party of young people. We started this and we brought this, and we are, for the sake of democracy, we are bringing our platform to say, you can use this platform to run. It has no problem. And there are many other parties like that who are saying to us, look, if they take PDP, they take the ADC, please, we offer you this platform. So that's going to be the result must come from the question, must be an answer to the question, using data, using contemporary analysis, who can win the votes? Because that's the whole essence. So I can assure you that the analysis will come to that.
Earlier on, you said the end justifies the means, and I want you to help Nigerians envisage there's your end, which is to win. We know that that is quite clear. But is the end for Nigerians, which is what will make them either connect to these means that you're putting out, or disconnect and say, let's plug our back into the APC and not the coalition. What is the end like? Because consistently the APC has asked questions like, does the coalition or whoever is representing the opposition, do you plan to remove subsidy or take it back or continue what we're doing? Do you plan to return us to the exchange rate which we had before and not the current one that we have? What exactly do you plan to do differently that the APC is not doing, particularly those major policies? And I'm not sure I've really gotten a clear answer to that.
Okay, so for us, the end is not for us to win. That's not the end. The end is to ensure that the people decide who wins.
And you want it to be you.
That's what we want.
But you want
no,
to be the winner.
If the people truly decide that it's not us, we're fine. I mean, you must come to a democracy with that conscience.
So you're fine if the people say
absolutely. But what we are saying is, let's give a level playing field where these people determine. Let's not use the Electoral Act to predetermine that there won't be network where there is network. Let's not use the Electoral Act to create legality for non-serialized ballot papers. Let's not use the Electoral Act to stifle democracy. Let's not use the institutions of states to prevent the people from determining. Our determination will be, our determination is that let the people decide who wins. Whoever, because I mean at the end it's the people who would enjoy or suffer. So let the people themselves, without let, determine that outcome. We don't want to win willy-nilly. We don't want to win a rigged election. We don't want to win an election and lose Nigeria. We want an election where Nigerians determine. That way, you don't win an election, you win Nigeria. This government that concentrated on winning the election, has been battling more than 3 years thereafter to win Nigerians.
So, are you going to crawl back on those policy decisions, return subsidy, return the exchange rate back to what it was before, and some of the other policies of this government, specifically now?
Now, clearly, why that conversation is yet to emerge is the fact that people are battling for their lives. You see, when you have fire in this room, you won't remember the backpack that you brought. You want to run out first. We have political fire, like Igini said. The economy, peace and security is linked to politics. The political emergence, the leadership recruitment processes in politics would determine, because your credibility to speak to the people, your credibility to think for them and think with them will come from the processes that you emerge from. And therefore, when you're taking decisions, you'll be determining, if you emerge from the people, you know that they are your number one stakeholder group, not financial houses in France, not foreign Nigerian-based entrepreneurs. You're thinking Nigeria first, because you emerge through a Nigeria first process. But if you emerge through an elite consensus, your number one stakeholder when you're trying to retain power will be to service the elites,
So
like you're finding here. So what we are saying is that the arguments, the research, the propositions, the alternative propositions are on ground. But if you finish discussing this proposition and you have no platform to stand, today we are talking about, like Napoleon Bonaparte said, give me but one firm spot to stand and I'll move the world. And we are simply saying, can Nigerians join us, like they are doing now, to loosen the chokehold on opposition parties, so that we can, someone is pressing my throat and you're saying I should propose to a lady. I want to leave first before I see the lady.
So for you, that is not on the table yet. You're trying to survive.
Those are on the table. But the discourse of the moment is the political survival of this democracy, is the survival of competitive democracy. It is the so if we begin to have all of those fine discussions, and at the end of the day, you have absolutely no platform, and we just have entertained you. And so these discussions are there. So for example, if you come to the issue of subsidy, this president in 2012 led a struggle against subsidy. And so he owes Nigerians an apology to say that, oh, what's the difference between removing subsidy then and removing it now? I believe as a person that every nation has a part of its national life that is subsidized. And while the issues of subsidy were not about whether it was getting to the common Nigerians, no, it was about the fraud that happened there and the loopholes that were there. And now the issue as of 2023 was not whether or not subsidy ought to have been removed, was how it was removed. That a gentleman who hadn't entered office yet stood outside and made an announcement, and that day the price of fuel, the unit price of fuel, went up more than 400%. That is what we are talking about. So the reckless disposition and the simplistic disposition to very complex issues.
Right.
So the issue is this. So what were the buffers kept before? You are now doing a post-removal buffer, which till today you can see that it hasn't had sufficient effect. Well, so if people earn 70,000 and you cannot fill your tank at a time, you know, with less than that amount of money,
right,
if you run a 100-liter tank capacity. So the question is, did we think through this process? And so now the opposition will present a robust alternative policy to all of this. And it will be written. Remember that we can't piggyback to 2023 because a lot has happened between them.
So you just basically continue with the current.
No. We are taking the research as of today and saying, how do we better the bad that has been done? That is where we are today.
Okay.
Because you can't go back to pre. Because if you go back to that to say that, oh, fuel will be 200 naira, what happens to the 1,300 we are buying today? So the strategic approach, which our joint teams have worked on, and that will come immediately we have a platform to negotiate this.
Mr. Namobong, the journey ahead is still quite eventful. There's still the courts that you're waiting on, whether it's for the PDP or the ADC or some of the other parties that have come together. So I'm sure you're also praying, aside the whole legal process, that we hope that this goes in our favor. Because if it doesn't, if it collapses the PDP or the ADC, what happens?
That's why we have Plan B. We have Plan C. We have Plan D.
It's Seriake Dixon's party.
No, we have a lot of plans.
Or Labour Party.
So much on the table. But you know, maneuvering before, and you should also be praying. You know why? A one-party state will not help the press.
Yes,
will not help the judiciary.
I pray.
Will not help anybody.
I pray every day. Certainly, you people are not on my prayer point. Nigeria is on my prayer point. But we wish you the very best.
And our survival is Nigeria's survival.
Absolutely. If at least you mean well for the people, as you say. But Mr. Ini Ememobong, we have to thank you for your time, National Publicity Secretary.
Thank you very much. Thank you.